Most people believe money comes from hard work. They think longer hours will save them. More hustle will fix them. More effort will finally change their life. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Some of the hardest working people in the world are also the most financially stuck. And that should scare you, because it means effort is not the problem. The real problem is something no one ever taught you. It's not strategy. It's not timing. It's not luck. It's the way you operate under pressure. And today, I'm going to show you why discipline changes income, why identity controls opportunity, and why most people unknowingly block their own success. Stay with me. You believe money is about numbers. You think it's about effort. You've been told it's about luck, timing, or strategy. But I'm going to tell you something very different. Money is not controlled by math. It is not ruled by hustle. And it is not decided by chance. It is shaped by alignment, by internal order, by the silent force you carry into every room. And that force is your presence. Not your words. Not your plans. Not your ambition. Your presence. Before you speak, it already speaks for you. Before you walk in, it has already arrived. Before you negotiate, apply, ask, or present, your internal state has already set the outcome. You do not get what you pursue. You get what your behavior consistently produces. Your inner condition is your broadcast. It is the signal you send unconsciously, continuously, and without permission. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If insecurity lives inside you, if doubt shapes your self-talk, if scarcity colors your expectations, then it does not matter how ambitious your goals are. You will quietly undermine every opportunity that comes near you. Not because you are unlucky, not because the system is unfair, but because your internal state and your desired future do not match. And mismatch always creates resistance. Every thought you repeat trains your nervous system. Every emotion you normalize programs your expectations. Every belief you carry becomes the filter through which opportunity passes. You are either welcoming prosperity or silently pushing it away. And most people never realize which one they are doing, because they try to perform confidence. They rehearse affirmations they do not feel. They smile while carrying fear underneath. They speak abundance while their body prepares for loss. And life responds to the deeper signal, not the performance, not the words, not the image. It responds to the internal truth. So let me ask you something that matters more than any strategy. What are you transmitting? Because your presence cannot lie. It reflects your emotional habits. It reveals your default expectations. It exposes what you believe when no one is listening. If you worry constantly about money, your signal says, I live in shortage. If you envy other people's success, your signal says, there is not enough for me. If you underprice yourself, apologize for your value, or feel guilt for winning, your signal says, I do not trust my own worth. And that signal becomes your limit. No tactic can override it. No method can bypass it. No opportunity can save you from it. Because results always follow internal order. Now let me clarify something important. This is not mysticism. This is not fantasy. This is not superstition. This is psychology, nervous system regulation, emotional conditioning, behavioral reinforcement. Your internal state is trained through repetition, through focus, through daily emotional discipline. And that internal state determines how you behave under pressure, how you negotiate, how you price, how you speak, how you choose, how you tolerate risk, and how you handle responsibility. Money does not listen to desire. It responds to readiness. So if you want wealth, stop trying to impress the world. Start training your internal system to tolerate expansion. Because if your body experiences abundance as danger, you will unconsciously block every breakthrough that comes near you. Here is something that will sound simple, but it governs more lives than people realize. Wealth does not begin in your wallet. It begins in your imagination. Can you hold the feeling of security before you see proof? Can you walk with calm before conditions improve? Can you think like a free person while circumstances are still uncertain? Most people cannot. They need evidence before belief. They need confirmation before confidence. They need permission before movement. But those who build lasting success reverse the order. They become internally stable first. They rehearse responsibility before resources arrive. They normalize expansion before income increases. They train the future inside themselves, before the world is able to reflect it back. That is not optimism. That is preparation. And preparation is what attracts opportunity. So where does this begin? It begins with identity. Not the name you were given. Not the story you inherited. Not the limitations you were taught. The version of yourself you practice every day. Many people are not poor by circumstance. They are poor by conditioning. They were trained to associate money with danger, with guilt, with corruption, with conflict. They learned to fear success, to distrust expansion, to expect loss after gain. And those beliefs do not disappear on their own. If shame exists around wealth, opportunity avoids you. If fear exists around responsibility, growth slows. If doubt exists around worth, success becomes unstable. Because resources flow toward stability, toward reliability, toward emotional readiness. Every complaint trains limitation. Every moment of resentment reinforces scarcity. Every habit of self-doubt programs avoidance. But every moment of gratitude stabilizes the nervous system. Every act of clarity strengthens expectation. Every decision to respect your own worth rewires the future. There are no shortcuts here. There are no exceptions. This is conditioning. And now we reach something most people misunderstand. You must not only think wealthy. You must feel capable of holding wealth. Because money is not just numbers. It is responsibility, choice, pressure, timing, risk. And if your emotional system has not been trained for that scale, you will lose it even if you receive it. That is why sudden money disappears. That is why promotions collapse. That is why success often reverses. Not because people are careless, but because their internal systems were built for a different level. So ask yourself something important. Can I practice stability now? Can I practice confidence without arrogance? Can I practice calm without denial? Can I carry myself with dignity before circumstances change? That is training, not pretending, not acting. Training. Now we go deeper. Your environment is not neutral. It is a multiplier. What you hear becomes what you expect. What you watch becomes what you normalize. What you tolerate becomes what you repeat. You cannot build clarity while consuming chaos. You cannot stabilize your future while surrounding yourself with complaint. You cannot train confidence while bathing in doubt. Your surroundings are programming you every day. So protect your inputs. Protect your conversations. Protect your attention. Because what you absorb becomes what you transmit. And what you transmit becomes what returns. At some point, something difficult must happen. You must release the older version of yourself. The version that plays small. The version that seeks approval before freedom. The version that chooses comfort over growth. Because that version cannot carry responsibility. It cannot manage expansion. It cannot protect opportunity. And when you refuse to release it, progress stalls, not as punishment, but as protection. Growth never outruns readiness. The moment you stop apologizing for your potential, the moment you stop shrinking your expectations, the moment you stop entertaining scarcity as normal, your presence changes. People feel it. Conversations shift. Trust increases. Opportunities appear. Not because you are lucky, because you are stable. Your internal system finally matches the future you are asking for. Now let's talk about something most people never examine honestly. Not strategy, not mindset, not motivation. Your emotional default. Because what decides your future is not how you perform on good days. It is who you become on ordinary days, when no one is watching, when nothing exciting is happening, when pressure shows up quietly. Your default state determines how you speak when uncertain, how you choose when tired, how you negotiate when nervous, how you behave when the outcome matters. And this is where most people unknowingly block themselves. They do not fail because they lack ambition. They fail because their nervous system is trained for a smaller life. Let me explain this clearly. Every human being develops an internal comfort zone, not for money, not for success, for emotional intensity. Some people are comfortable with calm. Some are comfortable with chaos. Some are comfortable with stability. Some are comfortable with crisis. And here's the problem. Your life will always drift back toward what your nervous system recognizes as familiar. If you are comfortable with uncertainty, you will unconsciously create it. If you are comfortable with struggle, you will normalize it. If you are comfortable with instability, you will tolerate it longer than you should. And if success feels unfamiliar, your system will quietly resist it. Not through sabotage that looks drama, but through hesitation, delay, underpricing, avoidance, overthinking, small decisions that slowly reshape your future. This is why some people receive opportunity and cannot hold it. This is why some promotions collapse. This is why some breakthroughs reverse. Not because they are careless, because their emotional system has not been trained for that level yet. Now this leads us to something critical. Wealth does not respond to desire. It responds to capacity. Capacity to manage stress. Capacity to tolerate responsibility. Capacity to make calm decisions under pressure. Capacity to delay gratification. Capacity to protect momentum. If those systems are unstable, growth becomes dangerous, and life slows it down on purpose, not as punishment, as protection, because expanding someone faster than their internal regulation can handle destroys them. Now here is where most motivational advice misleads people. They teach visualization without regulation. They teach confidence without discipline. They teach belief without structure. And that creates emotional inflation. People imagine wealth, but cannot handle conflict. They visualize freedom, but cannot tolerate uncertainty. They repeat affirmations, but panic when responsibility arrives. So progress collapses, and then they blame timing. They blame luck. They blame the system. But the truth is simpler. They were not trained for what they were asking for. Now here's the good news. This is not destiny. This is not personality. This is not fixed. It is conditioning. And conditioning can be changed. But it requires something most people avoid. Emotional discipline. Let me explain what that means in real life. Emotional discipline is the ability to remain stable while pressure increases. It is the skill of regulating your reactions before they become decisions. It is the habit of staying clear when uncertainty appears. Because wealth is not built during excitement. It is built during stress, during negotiations, during uncertainty, during delays, during setbacks, during responsibility. If your emotions control you in those moments, your future becomes unstable. Now watch this carefully. Two people can have the same skills, the same intelligence, the same education, and yet their outcomes will diverge dramatically. Why? Because one can regulate himself under pressure, and the other cannot. One stays calm while negotiating. The other becomes defensive. One holds boundaries. The other seeks approval. One delays gratification. The other chases relief. Over time, one becomes trusted. The other becomes overlooked. Not because of talent, because of emotional control. Now let's make this practical. Think about your own life. How do you behave when money feels tight? Do you become anxious and reactive, or calm and precise? How do you behave when opportunity appears? Do you rush and oversell, or stay grounded and clear? How do you behave when someone challenges your value? Do you collapse and discount, or stand steady and explain. These moments shape everything. Now here is the principle most people never learn. Your future is built less by what you want, and more by what you tolerate. What you tolerate in pricing, relationships, habits, conversations, environments, self-talk, quietly becomes your ceiling. If you tolerate chaos, you normalize it. If you tolerate disrespect, you train it. If you tolerate inconsistency, you live inside it. And no amount of dreaming overrides tolerance. Now let's talk about something even deeper. Identity, not the label you use, the behavior you repeat. Identity is not declared. It is practiced. Every decision sends a message inward. This is who I am. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce a smaller identity. Every time you act with clarity under pressure, you expand it. And this is where wealth is decided. Not in the market, not in the economy, not in timing. Inside identity. Because identity determines what you believe you deserve, what you expect to keep, what you feel safe holding. If your identity is trained for survival, prosperity feels threatening. If your identity is trained for responsibility, growth feels natural. This is why some people rise calmly, while others panic as they grow. Now let me give you a truth that changes everything. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your systems are emotional regulation, decision-making habits, routines, standards, boundaries, consistency. Goals excite you. Systems protect you. Without systems, success becomes temporary. Now here is something most people misunderstand. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is a byproduct of self-trust. And self-trust is built only one way: through keeping promises to yourself. Every time you finish what you start, every time you act despite discomfort, every time you choose discipline over relief, you teach your nervous system, I am reliable. And reliability becomes confidence. That confidence shows in posture, in pacing, in voice, in negotiation, in leadership. People trust it. Organizations reward it. Opportunities move toward it. Not because of charm, because stability attracts responsibility. Now let's talk about something dangerous. Performance confidence. Many people fake certainty. They memorize scripts. They copy behavior. They mimic leaders. But under pressure, performance collapses because it was never internal. True confidence survives pressure because it is built on identity, not image. This is why success is never sustained by motivation. It is sustained by regulation. Now we reach a critical shift. Most people are trying to change outcomes, but outcomes respond last. First, behavior changes. Then habits change. Then identity changes. Then expectations change. Then results change. Trying to reverse that order creates frustration. Now let me give you a powerful observation. Wealth is not created by force. It is created by reliability, reliable thinking, reliable behavior, reliable standards, reliable discipline. People invest in reliability. Organizations promote reliability. Markets reward reliability. Not excitement, not brilliance, not hype. Reliability. Now here is the question that decides your future. Who are you when things are uncertain? Do you become reactive or deliberate? Do you become anxious or analytical? Do you become impulsive or patient? Because uncertainty is the environment of wealth. All opportunity lives inside uncertainty. Markets, investments, negotiations, leadership, entrepreneurship. If uncertainty destabilizes you, you cannot hold expansion. Now let me introduce a concept that changes everything. Internal leadership. Before you can lead others, manage money, or build systems, you must lead yourself. Internal leadership means governing your emotions, directing your attention, controlling your impulses, choosing long-term over short-term, staying clear under pressure, And this is what creates authority. Not title, not position, not wealth. Authority comes from self-command. People sense it. They trust it. They follow it. And money moves toward it. Because money requires management. Now let's go deeper. There is a version of you that is emotionally prepared for your future. And there is a version of you that is trained for your past. One must be strengthened. The other must be released. The past version seeks comfort, avoids discomfort, fears responsibility, doubts worth, waits for permission. The future version tolerates pressure, welcomes responsibility, expects stability, respects discipline, acts without applause. And every day you are choosing which one you train, through habits, through routines, through self-talk, through standards. Now let me say something important. You do not become wealthy by believing in wealth. You become wealthy by becoming emotionally qualified for it. That means you can stay calm when stakes rise. You can delay gratification without resentment. You can handle pressure without panic. You can receive success without guilt. You can protect growth without fear. That is readiness. And readiness attracts opportunity. Now here is where most people lose progress. They chase motivation. But motivation is unstable. It spikes, then fades. Discipline remains. Systems remain. Regulation remains. The future is built by what remains. After excitement disappears. Now let me give you a simple law. Pressure reveals identity, not creates it, reveals it. So if you collapse under pressure, that is your current training. If you stay clear under pressure, that is your current identity. And identity determines destiny, not mystically, but mechanically, through choices, through habits, through standards. Now here is something few people realize. Wealth does not require aggression. It requires precision, calm thinking, measured decisions, strategic patience, emotional restraint. Those qualities compound faster than hustle ever could. Now ask yourself honestly, am I training stability? Or am I training reaction? Am I training patience? Or am I training urgency? Am I training discipline? Or am I training avoidance? Because whatever you train becomes automatic. And whatever becomes automatic shapes your future. Now we are ready for the next layer. Standards. But before we go there, you must understand this one truth. Your life is not limited by your ambition. It is limited by your regulation. Fix regulation, and everything else accelerates. Now let's talk about something that quietly decides success long before money ever appears. Decision quality. Because wealth is not built by how many decisions you make. It is built by how well you make them. When pressure is present, most people believe decisions are logical. They are not. Decisions are emotional first, rational second. What you choose in moments of uncertainty is shaped by how regulated your nervous system is, not how intelligent you are. And this explains one of the greatest contradictions in life. Why smart people fail, and why emotionally stable people rise. Now listen carefully. Every important outcome in your life is downstream from a small decision you made while tired, stressed, rushed, or seeking relief. The job you accepted too quickly. The price you lowered because you felt nervous. The investment you delayed because you feared loss. The opportunity you avoided because you doubted yourself. None of those choices looked dramatic, but together, they shaped your trajectory. This is why success is rarely about brilliance. It is about consistency in judgment. And consistency in judgment comes from regulation. Now here is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is forcing behavior. But real discipline is protecting clarity. It is the ability to pause between impulse and action. It is the skill of saying, let me not decide from emotion. Because emotional decisions create financial consequences. Now let me show you how this works in real life. Imagine two people negotiating salary. One enters anxious, afraid of rejection, worried about approval. He softens his language. He lowers expectations. He signals uncertainty without saying a word. The other enters calm, prepared, clear about value. He speaks slower. He listens carefully. He does not rush to please. Same skills, same position, completely different outcomes. Not because of negotiation tactics, because of emotional posture. Now multiply that across pricing decisions, business deals, investments, career moves, partnerships. The calm person compounds advantage. The reactive person leaks it. Now let me give you a principle that explains decades of outcomes. Money flows toward those who protect clarity under pressure. Because clarity produces better timing, better boundaries, better pricing, better negotiations, better risk management. And those advantages compound. Now here is the part most people avoid confronting. Stress is not the enemy. Poor stress management is. Pressure is not what blocks wealth. Pressure is what reveals whether you are ready. Because the higher you rise, the more pressure you carry, more responsibility, more visibility, more risk, more consequence. If you cannot regulate at low levels, higher levels will crush you. Now this leads to a dangerous pattern. People chase growth. Before they build capacity, they want income to rise. Before regulation rises, they want opportunity to expand. Before discipline expands, they want influence. Before emotional maturity, and then they collapse. Now here is something most people never hear. Your nervous system sets your earning range. Not your intelligence, not your degree, not your ambition. Your tolerance for uncertainty, pressure, delayed gratification, responsibility, rejection determines how high you can go without breaking. This is why emotional training is more important than strategy. Strategy changes often. Regulation compounds forever. Now let me make this extremely practical. When you feel stress rising, your body prepares for danger. Breathing shortens. Muscles tighten. Vision narrows. Thinking becomes rigid. In that state, you do not choose wisely. You choose safety over growth, comfort over progress, relief over discipline. And then later you call it fate. But it was not fate. It was physiology. Now here is the turning point. People who rise learn to interrupt this cycle. They train themselves to stay regulated. Inside uncomfortable situations, they slow their breathing. They stabilize posture. They widen attention. They delay response. And suddenly, their thinking clears. Now decisions improve. And improved decisions change everything. Now let's go deeper. There is something called decision fatigue. Every choice consumes energy. The more emotionally reactive you are, the faster you drain your clarity. By afternoon, you begin making poor choices. You procrastinate. You avoid. You overeat. You overspend. You underperform. Not because you are weak, because your system is exhausted. This is why wealthy people design systems. Not to look impressive, but to protect judgment. They reduce unnecessary decisions. They create routines. They standardize habits. They remove chaos. Because clarity is capital. Now here is something subtle but powerful. Wealth is not created by heroic effort. It is created by preserving mental bandwidth. When your mind is overloaded, your future shrinks. Now think about your life. How many decisions do you make emotionally each day? When tired? When anxious? When rushed? When insecure? Those decisions seem small, but over years, they shape income, health, relationships, confidence, identity. Now let me show you the next layer. Standards. Standards decide behavior before motivation appears. A standard says, "This is how I operate," regardless of mood, regardless of stress, regardless of outcome. People with low standards depend on motivation. People with high standards depend on identity. And identity always wins. Now here is a truth few accept. Your standards predict your future. more accurately than your goals. Because goals inspire. Standards enforce. If your standard allows. Inconsistency. A lateness. Excuses. Emotional decisions. Avoidance. Then no goal saves you. Now ask yourself honestly. What do I tolerate that is quietly limiting me? Do I tolerate distraction? Poor boundaries? Inconsistent routines? Emotional reactions? Undervaluing myself? Whatever you tolerate becomes permanent. Now here is something uncomfortable. Most people do not fail because they aim too high. They fail because they live too loosely. Loose habits, loose discipline, loose thinking, loose boundaries, and loose systems cannot carry wealth. Now let me introduce a powerful idea. Wealth is not built by intensity. It is built by stability. Stability in routines, sleep, emotions, focus, health, decisions. Stability creates predictability. Predictability creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Now think about the people who control resources, investors, executives, leaders. What do they look for? Calm, consistency, judgment, self-control, not excitement, not hype, not charisma. Now here is the dangerous part. Many people try to build wealth while their inner life is chaotic. They fight their own impulses. They negotiate with their habits. They collapse under stress. And then they wonder why progress feels fragile. Now listen carefully. You cannot build a stable future on an unstable nervous system. Regulation comes first, then growth. Now here is the turning insight. You do not need more motivation. You need more emotional training. Training to pause before reacting, breathe under pressure, delay gratification, tolerate uncertainty, stay clear during conflict. Those skills multiply income more than any strategy ever will. Now let me show you how identity shifts. Every time you regulate instead of react, you upgrade your identity. Every time you choose discipline over relief, you strengthen it. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you expand it. And identity expansion is what allows wealth to stay. Now here is a principle that explains success over decades. Money stays with people who can handle their own nervous system because they do not panic in downturns. They do not overspend in highs. They do not chase hype. They do not collapse under loss. They remain steady, and steadiness compounds. Now ask yourself something important. When pressure increases in my life, do I become clearer or more reactive? Because that answer tells you exactly how far you can go right now. Now let me say something critical. You are not broken. You are trained, and training can be changed. But it requires deliberate practice, not affirmations, not visualization, not slogans. Practice, daily regulation, daily discipline, daily structure, daily boundaries. Now here is where real transformation begins. When you stop trying to feel confident and start trying to become stable. Stability is more valuable than confidence. Confidence fluctuates. Stability compounds. Now we are ready for the next phase. Habits, routines, systems. Because identity is built, not by insight, but by repetition. And repetition decides destiny. Not mystically, but mechanically. Now we arrive at the part where most transformation actually happens. Habits. Because motivation fades. Emotion fluctuates. Insight disappears. But habits remain. And habits quietly decide who rises and who repeats the same life for decades. Now listen carefully. You do not live the life you want. You live the life your habits produce. Not your goals. Not your intentions. Not your plans. Your habits. Because habits operate when willpower is gone. They run when you are tired. They decide when you are distracted. They control behavior when emotion takes over. And over time, they shape income, health, confidence, relationships, and identity. Now here is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is forcing yourself to work harder. It is not. Discipline is designing your life, so the right behavior becomes automatic. Because willpower is unreliable. Some days you have it. Some days you do not. Habits remove negotiation. When something is habitual, there is no debate. You simply act. Now let me show you something important. Most financial problems are not income problems. They are habit problems. Overspending, avoiding planning, emotional buying, inconsistent saving, delayed investing, poor time management. And behind each habit is an emotional pattern. Buying for relief, avoiding for comfort, procrastinating to escape stress, distracting to numb uncertainty. So wealth is not built by changing numbers first. It is built by changing patterns. Now here is a principle that explains long-term success. Small habits compound faster than big decisions. One disciplined routine, repeated daily, beats a brilliant strategy, used occasionally. Now think about your day, how you wake, how you begin, how you transition, how you recover, how you finish. Those moments shape momentum. Now let me show you something subtle but powerful. Morning habits set emotional tone. If you start rushed, reactive, and distracted, your nervous system enters survival mode. And when survival mode is active, you choose safety over growth. But if you start calmly, intentionally, and clearly, your nervous system enters regulation mode. And regulated systems make better decisions all day. This is why high performers protect mornings. Not to be productive, to be regulated. They slow breathing. They reduce stimulation. They set priorities. They anchor identity. Because the first hour programs the next 12. Now here is the next layer. Environment. Environment trains behavior. Without asking permission. Noise trains distraction. Chaos trains reactivity. Disorder trains inconsistency. Negativity trains limitation. And most people try to change themselves without changing surroundings. That never works long term. Because behavior follows context. If your phone is always near, focus collapses. If distractions are everywhere, discipline weakens. If complaints are normal, standards fall. Now let me give you a rule. Design beats discipline. When environment supports growth, behavior improves automatically. This is why wealthy people redesign schedules, offices, homes, calendars, social circles, not for luxury, for control, because control protects consistency. Now here is where identity strengthens. Every habit you repeat sends a message inward. This is who I am. When you train daily, you become disciplined. When you plan daily, you become intentional. When you regulate daily, you become stable. And stability creates confidence without trying. Now here is something very important. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. If your system supports chaos, you return to chaos. If your system supports clarity, you return to clarity. Now let me talk about something rarely discussed. Transitions. Transitions are where discipline dies. Between tasks, between meetings, between work and rest, between stress and recovery. In transitions, people check phones, snack emotionally, scroll aimlessly, lose focus, and those small leaks destroy momentum. High performers protect transitions. They pause. They breathe. They reset posture. They set intention. Because transitions determine whether you carry clarity forward or lose it. Now let's go deeper. Sleep. Sleep is not recovery. Sleep is performance. Poor sleep weakens regulation, increases impulsivity, damages judgment, reduces discipline, increases emotional eating, increases spending, increases avoidance. And people try to build wealth while exhausted. That never works. Fatigue destroys judgment. Now here is a principle. If you protect sleep, You protect future income. Because rested minds make better decisions. Now think about habits again. Which habits in your life are quietly draining you? Late nights, distraction, skipping routines, avoiding planning, inconsistent schedules. Each one seems harmless, but together, they shape identity. Now let me introduce something powerful. Keystone habits. These are habits that change many behaviors at once. Examples: waking at the same time daily, daily movement, daily planning, daily reflection, consistent sleep time. One keystone habit stabilizes multiple systems, and stability is the foundation of wealth. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people know what to do. They just do not repeat it. And repetition is what rewires the nervous system. Insight does not change identity. Repetition does. Now here is the turning point. When your habits change, your baseline changes. When your baseline changes, your decisions improve. When decisions improve, results change. And when results change, identity upgrades. This is the real growth cycle. Not belief, not attraction, not visualization. Behavior, consistency, regulation. Now let me show you what wealthy habits look like. Not glamorous, not dramatic, very boring. Consistent sleep, predictable routines, structured mornings, protected focus, scheduled planning, disciplined recovery, a limited stimulation, controlled consumption. This is not exciting, but this is how stability is built. Now here is something critical. You do not need perfect habits. You need reliable habits. Perfection collapses. Reliability compounds. A habit done at 70% daily beats a habit done at 100% occasionally. Now let me say something very important. Habits are identity in motion. You are not trying to become disciplined. You are proving you already are. Each repetition casts a vote for the person you are becoming. And identity changes, one vote at a time. Now ask yourself something honest. What person am I training myself to become daily? Reactive or regulated? Distracted or focused? Avoidant or disciplined? Inconsistent or reliable? Because that person will inherit your future. Now here is the final layer of habits. Boundaries. Boundaries protect energy. Without boundaries, your time leaks. Your focus fractures. Your discipline collapses. High performers say no often. No to distractions. No to unnecessary meetings. No to emotional drains. No to chaos. Not because they are cold, because they protect direction. Now think about this. Every yes you give is a no to something else. And many people say yes to things that steal their future. Now let me give you a rule. Protect what builds you. Limit what drains you. That single principle transforms lives. Now we are approaching something important. Integration. Because habits alone are not enough. Habits must align with direction. Direction, identity, systems, regulation, all must work together. And when they do, progress becomes automatic. Not forced. Not stressful. Not exhausting. Sustainable. Now in the next part, we will talk about responsibility, ownership, self-trust, accountability, and how control returns when you stop outsourcing your future. Because wealth is not built by hoping. It is built by owning. Now we reach the point where everything finally becomes real. Responsibility. Because until responsibility is accepted, nothing truly changes. Motivation fades. Insight fades. Emotion fades. But responsibility stays. Responsibility is the moment you stop waiting and start owning. Now listen carefully. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is control. Blame gives relief. Responsibility gives power. Blame says, something outside me caused this. Responsibility says, I can influence what happens next. And the moment you say that, your future comes back into your hands. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people do not lack opportunity. They lack ownership. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for conditions. They wait for someone to guide them. But no one arrives. And slowly, years disappear. Now let me show you something important. Every successful life contains one moment where a person stops explaining and starts owning. They stop saying, "My past, my family, my education, my boss, my environment," and they start asking, "What am I doing daily?" That keeps this pattern alive. That question is dangerous, because once you see the answer, you can no longer pretend. Now here is where real discipline begins. Not discipline of work, discipline of honesty. Honesty about habits, reactions, avoidance, emotional patterns, standards, priorities. Now let me explain why this matters financially. Money flows toward reliability, not toward talent, not toward dreams, not toward ambition, toward reliability. People trust reliable behavior. Organizations reward reliability. Systems promote reliability. And reliability is built only through responsibility. Now look at your life honestly. Where are you inconsistent? Where do you break promises to yourself? Where do you delay difficult actions? Where do you avoid uncomfortable decisions? Those places are where your future is leaking. Now here is a principle. Self-trust precedes external trust. If you cannot trust yourself to wait consistently, follow routines, keep commitments, manage emotion, finish tasks, the world will hesitate to trust you with more. Not morally, structurally, because responsibility requires stability. Now let me show you something subtle. Every time you avoid a responsibility, your nervous system learns. Running is safer than leading. Every time you face a responsibility, your nervous system learns. I can handle pressure. And over time, one creates fear, the other creates confidence. Now here is the next layer. Decision-making. Because responsibility lives inside decisions. Most people delay decisions because they fear consequences. But indecision has consequences too. Lost time, lost momentum, lost clarity, lost confidence. And here is the truth. Wealth is built by decision speed and quality. Not perfect decisions. Clear decisions. Now let me explain. High performers do not always decide correctly, but they decide quickly. Observe feedback. Adjust rapidly. And move forward. Low performers delay. Overthink. Seek certainty. Wait for comfort. And freeze. Now here is the key. Confidence does not come before decisions. It comes after repeated decisions. Every time you choose and act, your nervous system learns control. Now think about your finances. Budgeting, investing, saving, pricing, negotiating. All are decisions under emotion. Fear makes people avoid. Greed makes people rush. Insecurity makes people undercharge. Ego makes people overspend. So money problems are decision problems. And decision problems are emotional regulation problems. Now let me introduce a powerful principle. Clarity reduces anxiety. Most anxiety is not fear of reality. It is fear of uncertainty. And uncertainty comes from lack of planning. When you plan, income, expenses, time, goals, priorities, your nervous system relaxes. Relaxed systems make better decisions. Now here is something rarely said. Planning is emotional regulation. When you plan, you remove ambiguity. You reduce threat. You increase control. This is why wealthy people plan constantly. Not because they are anxious, because they protect clarity. Now here comes the next layer. Accountability. Accountability is how responsibility stays alive. Without accountability, discipline decays. Now accountability has two forms. External and internal. External is useful. Internal is essential. Internal accountability means reviewing behavior, tracking actions, measuring progress, correcting patterns, facing numbers honestly. Now let me give you a powerful daily habit. Daily reflection. At night, ask, what did I do well today? What did I avoid today? Where did I lose control? Where did I act with discipline? Not to judge, to adjust. Because reflection converts experience into learning. Now here is a critical truth. People who never reflect repeat the same year forever. Different calendar. Same habits. Same income. Same stress. Same patterns. Now let me show you something about wealth and responsibility. Wealth follows people who can handle responsibility calmly. Because responsibility brings pressure, deadlines, money, people, risk, uncertainty. If pressure makes you reactive, systems avoid giving you more. Not because you are unworthy, because instability is dangerous. Now here is a rule. Calm under pressure is one of the rarest and most valuable skills. It builds trust faster than talent. Now ask yourself something important. When pressure rises, do you panic, rush, avoid, react emotionally, freeze? Or do you? Slow breathing. Clarify priorities. Make clean decisions. Stay steady. Because the second group gets promoted, gets funded, gets trusted. Now let me talk about something deep. Self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of discipline. Without self-respect, habits collapse, standards drop, boundaries disappear. Self-respect says, my future matters, my time matters, my discipline matters. And self-respect is built by honoring commitments to yourself. Small commitments, daily commitments, unseen commitments. Now here is the turning point. The moment you stop negotiating with yourself, your life accelerates. No more. I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix it later. It's not important now. Instead, this is who I am now. That shift changes identity. Now let me show you the next principle. Ownership creates momentum. When you own outcomes, you stop wasting energy blaming. When you stop blaming, energy returns to action. When action becomes consistent, results begin moving. Slowly, quietly, predictably. Now here is a critical financial truth. Money stays with people who take responsibility for mistakes. Not those who hide them. Not those who deny them. Not those who excuse them. Mistakes are inevitable. Avoidance is optional. Now think about investing. The best investors lose money. The difference is, they analyze losses. They adjust strategy. They improve discipline. They refine risk. Poor investors deny, blame, chase, repeat. Same with business. Same with careers. Same with life. Now let me introduce something powerful. Standards. Standards are invisible rules that govern behavior automatically. Standards decide how you treat time, how you handle stress, how you speak, how you decide, or what you tolerate. And standards are stronger than motivation. Motivation fluctuates. Standards remain. Now here is the key. Your life never rises above your standards. If your standard is comfort, growth stops. If your standard is discipline, progress continues. Now ask yourself something honest. What do I tolerate that is quietly damaging my future? Late nights, poor planning, distractions, unreliable habits, avoided conversations. Tolerance shapes destiny. Now here comes the most important shift. Control. Because wealth is not built by luck. It is built by control. Control over time, attention, emotion, habits, decisions, boundaries. And control is trained daily, not dramatically, through small disciplined actions. Now let me say something very important. You do not become wealthy by wanting more. You become wealthy by controlling more. Control creates stability. Stability creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity creates resources. Not magically, structurally. Now in the next part, we will talk about identity, self-image, confidence, internal standards, and how behavior reshapes personality. Because the final stage of wealth is not money. It is becoming the kind of person who naturally produces it. Now we arrive at the final and most important layer, identity. Because long before money changes, before status changes, before opportunity changes, who you believe you are must change first. Now listen carefully. Your behavior is not random. It is an expression of identity. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your self-image. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you will act inconsistently. If you see yourself as disciplined, your behavior will slowly align. This is why most people fail after short success. They upgrade income, but not identity. They receive opportunity, but not self-trust. And identity pulls them back to baseline. Now let me explain something critical. Your nervous system protects identity. It will resist anything that feels unfamiliar, unsafe, or undeserved. That is why people sabotage promotions, businesses, relationships, money. Not because they are lazy, because their identity has not caught up. Now here is the principle. Your nervous system must learn that success is safe. And safety is built by repetition, not affirmations, not visualization. Behavior, small daily behaviors. Teach the nervous system. I am reliable. I can handle pressure. I finish what I start. I manage uncertainty calmly. That becomes identity. Now let me show you how identity is built. Identity is not formed by thinking. It is formed by evidence. Every time you keep a promise, finish a task, manage emotion, resist distraction, choose discipline, your brain records, this is who I am. And over time, confidence becomes automatic. Now here is something very powerful. Confidence is not personality. It is memory. Memory of past control. Memory of past discipline. Memory of past follow-through. That is why disciplined people look calm. They trust themselves. Now we reach the final system. Standards. Because standards shape identity. Goals are temporary. Standards are permanent. A goal says, I want this result. A standard says, this is how I operate. Standards decide how you wake, how you plan, how you work, how you speak, how you recover, how you decide. Now listen carefully. Your future is built, not by what you want, but by what you refuse to tolerate. Late starts, emotional reactions, poor planning, distractions, excuses. What you tolerate today becomes your ceiling tomorrow. Now let me show you the final mechanism. Consistency. Because consistency compounds. Intensity creates spikes. Consistency creates systems. Systems scale. Spikes fade. Wealth is not built in breakthroughs. It is built in boring discipline. Daily habits. Weekly reviews. Monthly adjustments. Yearly patience. Now let me say something important. Transformation does not happen on big days. It happens on ordinary days. When motivation is low, no one is watching, results are invisible, energy is limited. That is when identity is trained. Now here is the final law. Results follow internal order. Calm improves judgment. Judgment improves decisions. Decisions improve consistency. Consistency builds trust. Trust attracts opportunity. Opportunity creates resources. Not magically, logically. Now I want to leave you with one final principle. Wealth is not about chasing money. It is about becoming reliable. Reliable with time, emotion, discipline, decisions, responsibility. Money flows toward people who are stable under pressure. Because stability creates trust. Now ask yourself something honestly. Who am I becoming every day? Not who I want to be. Who I am training myself to be. With my habits, my reactions, my priorities, my standards, my discipline. Because the future does not respond to intention. It responds to pattern. Now here is the final charge. You do not need permission. You do not need signs. You do not need approval. You need discipline, clarity, standards, consistency, responsibility. And if you practice these long enough, results will not arrive suddenly. They will accumulate quietly, predictably, inevitably, because that is how progress actually works. Not through luck, not through motivation, not through miracles, through identity, through discipline, through control. And when those change, your income follows, your confidence follows, your opportunities follow. Because by then, you are no longer chasing success. You have become the kind of person it naturally follows.